Some of the best cash crops in high tunnels are the ones that benefit the most from that early growth period and also produce well in terms of profitability at the market. One of the most popular crops to be grown in a high tunnel is certainly tomatoes. For your warm season crops, probably some of the best ones to grow are tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and any other high value squashes or quick season crops. In the wintertime, we grow a lot of lettuces and a lot of Asian greens. Again, these are crops that are going to be very valuable and things that you can take to market pretty quickly in order to regain the cost of that high tunnel. Everything grows great under plastic. We find that almost any crop that you want to grow in a high tunnel will probably grow much better inside the high tunnel than it does outside. It's not true for all crops, but most things really like growing underneath the plastic. Probably the most important thing to think about is just if you can get the money back at market to justify the use of the high tunnel and the cost of the structure. And this is the reason why we typically look at high value, short season crops for tunnels. There's a number of different varieties of all types of vegetables that are now being bred specifically for the use of passive greenhouses or high tunnels. Among our tomato varieties, there's a number of really good varieties that grow really well in the high tunnels and maybe don't do so well in the open field. And the same can be said about many of our cucumbers and other vegetable crops. The other thing that's important to think about, especially with cucurbits, is in the high tunnel it's good to use parthenocarpic varieties. These are varieties that are self-pollinating. They don't require bees to actually pollinate them. And this can be a big advantage in the high tunnel because the pollinators may not have as good access to the plants. Early on, one of the first adopters to high tunnels are actually cut flower growers. One of the nice things about growing under plastic for cut flower production is that underneath the plastic, the stems get quite a bit longer and the quality of the cut flowers is much, much higher inside the high tunnel than it is outside the high tunnel. In fact, there's quite a few cut flowers out there that will grow very well inside of a high tunnel, but won't hardly grow at all outside. The other thing that's really nice about them is it extends the season, and for a cut flower grower this is very important because they can use those successional plantings in order to maintain good cut flower quality throughout the course of the year. You should have no problem growing cut flowers and vegetables in the same high tunnel, and in fact that'd be a recommended crop rotation. If you have a strong market for cut flowers, it's a great way to integrate crop rotation into your high tunnels, is having flowers in one tunnel and vegetables in another tunnel and flip-flopping them from year to year. High tunnels are managed and planted very intensively, both in terms of planting density of an actual crop and planting density over time. Many growers like to utilize short season crops and keep their high tunnels as full as possible all the time. A good example of increased planting density is with tomatoes. Most growers will put about 4,000 plants to the acre on outside tomato production, but inside the high tunnel it can be as much as double that in order to increase that per square productivity of the high tunnel. Oftentimes growers will use things like double rows and other innovative cultural techniques to try and increase that per square foot production inside the high tunnel. There's a lot of places where you can get information about varieties that are good for high tunnels. Of course, Extension is a great place to do that. Here at K-State, we like to do a lot of work looking at different varieties, especially for tomatoes and right now peppers as well, that grow well in the high tunnel. And a lot of this information can be found online or through Extension publications through K-State Research and Extension. Another great place to get information about varieties and variety trial work is through the Midwest Variety Trial Guide that's put out through Purdue University. And there's several people that do work specifically in high tunnels that have published variety trials in those technical proceedings. And that's another good place to get information about varieties that do well in high tunnels. Probably the final place where you can find varieties that do well in high tunnels is simply in your seed catalogs. Many of the varieties that have been bred specifically for use in high tunnels are marketed that way, and so you can find this information in your seed catalogs or by talking to your local seed reps.